Hey, listen to me clearly. If you are a child of God, you don't ever have to be afraid of Matthew chapter 7. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say that this is the scariest verse in the Bible.
So I actually think the scariest verse in the entire Bible for me is Matthew 7:21.
Verses 21 and 23. These words today are some of the scariest words in the entire Bible.
And then we get these terrifying verses today. So we're going to look at that today. It sounds like a happy topic, doesn't it? But let me read this to you again. Listen to what Jesus tells people. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord.
I want to give you 3 reasons why you don't ever have to be afraid of Matthew chapter 7 if you're a child of God. You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to think about it twice. Listen, here's what Matthew 7 says. Reading from verse 21, it says, "Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?" It continues to say, "Then I will tell them plainly, depart from me, I never knew you, workers of iniquity." Here's the first reason why you don't have to be afraid of Matthew chapter 7. Number 1, context. You see, it's extremely clear that in this context, Jesus is actually speaking to false teachers, false prophets, wolves in sheep's clothing. There are people out there who have malicious intent to deceive God's people, and he is specifically speaking to them. You simply need to read the verses right above. And so what Jesus is actually doing is he's warning God's children to be careful of those who have actual malicious intent to deceive God's children. Jesus is not speaking specifically to someone who has a sincere desire to follow him, to earnest believers who may be struggling in their faith, to people who go to church but may not live exactly like the values that they have in church. That is not who Jesus is speaking to. Neither is it those that Jesus is speaking about. In fact, he says, you will know them by their fruit. And what he says is that, hey, let me explain to you what is not fruit. What is not fruit is preaching. What is not fruit is demon casting. What is not fruit is works or performance. This is what fruit is not. However, he says that the fruit you ought to look for is those who do the will of the Father. Now, if you're wondering what the will of the Father is, it's found in John chapter 6, verse 40. Real simple. Jesus says, the will of my Father is that they would know and believe in the Son. He says this to a group of people who were looking for him to teach him how to do great miracles, how to do the will of God. He says, let me explain something to you. All you need to do, you want to know what the will of God is? The will of God is to know the Son and believe in him. That is what the Father's will is. So to summarize point number 1, Matthew chapter 7 is not speaking about believers in their process of sanctification. It's specifically speaking to wolves in sheep's clothing, people with malicious intent, not believers, but people with malicious intent to deceive God's children. This verse is not warning God's children, hey, does God really know you? Does God really know you? You better make sure that God knows you. That is not the point of this verse. If you have placed your faith in Jesus, know this securely, that God knows you. And he is in you, and you are in him, and you are reigning with him in life. Number 2, here's the second reason why you don't ever have to be afraid of Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 and 22. God's will. Those that enter the gates of heaven are those that do the will of the Father, which has been outlined, that the will of the Father is to know Jesus and believe in him. Jesus makes it clear that to enter heaven, it's not about performance. It is not about your works. It is about coming under the ruleship and the kingship of the one you know, which is Jesus Christ. It's knowing God's will. And God's will is believing in him and knowing him. Number 3, we gotta answer the question right. These men or these women who said, in your name we performed miracles, in your name we prophesied, simply answered the question wrong. When Jesus says, depart from me, I never knew you, how many would agree that there's nothing that we can do to make God know us? There's nothing that we can do to make him know us. But he says that he tells these individuals, depart from me, I never knew you. Saying knew you, he's not saying that I didn't know you in terms of information. He's saying that I didn't have intimacy with you. There was no intimate relationship that we shared together. The only way that you can enter an intimate relationship with Jesus is by placing your faith in his grace. For salvation is by grace through faith. See, they got the answer wrong because they didn't have a relationship with him. See, they thought they can get to heaven by listing a bunch of things that they did. But none of that gets you into heaven. What gets you into heaven is not a list of what you do, but it's really about whose you are. It's not about what you've done. It's not about a list of accomplishments. It's about who he is and having an intimate relationship with him, knowing him. You don't ever have to doubt about God knowing you. You don't ever have to think twice about it, because when you've placed your faith in Jesus, you've become intimate with the Son of God. You have been made righteous when you've placed faith in the Son of God, Jesus Christ. So you don't ever have to be afraid of Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 and 22. Don't be scared, because if you place your faith in Jesus Christ, he is living on the inside of you. It's about placing your faith in who he is and what he's accomplished. So how do you answer the question right? Hey, why should I let you into heaven? It's simple. Because I know you. Because I've entered an intimate relationship with you by placing my faith in all you've done and all you are. Let's summarize this whole thing. Number one, you don't have to be afraid, because in context, it's not speaking about a believer in their process of sanctification. It is speaking about wolves in sheep's clothing. Number two, it's because it's God's will. It's knowing God's will is not about performance. It's about his performance and placing your faith in him. And number three, you are answering the question right, because you know him. You have entered an intimate relationship with him, not just head knowledge, but you've entered an intimate relationship with him in your heart. You don't ever have to be afraid. Come on, stop that. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. And if you'd like to watch more like it, be sure to subscribe so that you won't miss anything we release. You can also hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified as soon as we do so. And if you'd like to watch our live stream service every Sunday, all the information is in the description below. God bless you. See you soon.